and welcome to GameSack. We are taking another look at the Nintendo 64.
Yes, we are, and I have a huge theory on why we're doing this video again, but I'm not going to say anything until we take a look at the overview video that Joe made for this episode.
Okay, well, let's just look at it right now. Realistically lush and detailed 3D worlds were the promise of the Nintendo 64. While other companies forged ahead with CD technology, Nintendo decided to stick with cartridges due to speed and piracy issues. But the world found a way to pirate games almost immediately with the Dr. V64 attachment. The system is also known for its unique three-handled controller with its exciting plethora of C buttons and an analog stick, though I personally prefer this Hori pad, which was only released in Japan. And of course, right on the front of the system were 4 controller ports built right in. Inside the system was a wicked NEC VR4300 CPU running at 93.75 MHz. The graphics were handled by a 62.5 MHz RCP, which of course stands for Reality Coprocessor. Because the Nintendo 64 is all about reality! As one of the last remnants of the Bit Wars, the Nintendo 64 saw 388 released games and sold about 33 million units worldwide.
All right, that was a highly informative video as always, and did you have to put that in a backpack when you carried it up the side of the mountain?
A bag, maybe?
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily backpack. Why?
Was it a game sack?
Oh my god.
Anyways, my theory is that it's obvious to you as well as it is to me that Joe loves the Nintendo 64. He doesn't want anybody to know, but, you know, he's doing this video just so he can play some more games. Am I right?
And if you notice, this video is in 4K because the Nintendo 64 requires 4K.
It truly does
and
require.
It's also at 60 frames per second, which is almost as fast as the Nintendo 64's slowest game.
That is amazing.
Anyway, let's get into the games themselves.
Let's take a look at a few of Konami's offerings. Here's the Mystical Ninja starring Goemon from 1998. In my opinion, the game made a good transition to 3D. It plays very similar to other titles and has you roaming towns to get information and items that are necessary for your adventure. The game still retains the light comedy that it always had, and you see little bits of funny things here and there. The towns look okay and have some decent detail to them. You have a map screen that you can pull up in real time that helps you determine where you are. In the old games, you were able to hit anybody you wanted to with your pipe, but in this installment you can only hit the thieves. Once you get out of town though, it's all enemies, so whack away. Also, when you leave town, the areas are much bigger, which brings in the fog, so you can't see too far away. Enemies also pop in when you start to get close to them, and the detail in the background goes way down compared to the smaller areas. But hey, at least you have some good music to listen to while you're wandering around. Goemon controls great, and you can switch between him and 3 other characters once you unlock them. My only real complaint about this game is the lack of camera control. For the most part, the camera works fine, but when you get into tight areas, it pretty much sucks. Still, the game is fun and is definitely worth a play. Goemon's Great Adventure came out the next year in 1999. Konami did a great thing here and made this installment a 2.5D platformer. This is great as it feels much more like the 16-bit games. The game looks pretty good, and one cool thing that I like was the day and night cycle. Stages feel slightly different when the sun sets and more ghosts are out there. There's also different things that can only be done at night. For example, during the daytime this well is empty, but at night you find this iguana man who will give you a pass if you just leave him alone. Things like this add a little bit of depth to the game, and I'm good with that. Here you get another great soundtrack that's lighthearted and fits nicely with the game's humor, which helps make this another good game for the system. Castlevania was also released for the system under the basic title of Castlevania. I'll be honest, I wasn't really happy seeing Konami taking my favorite 2D series and giving it a 3D installment, but being a big fan of the series, I had to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll tell you right now, it's down towards the bottom of my list when I rank Castlevania titles. As far as Castlevania games go, this game kinda sucks. As far as an action platformer goes, it's really not that bad. You can choose between 2 players at the beginning and off you go to kill Dracula. Controlling Reinhardt is a mixed bag. For the most part, I had no problems getting him to go where I wanted him to. He does have an auto-lock onto enemies when fighting, which is very helpful. But when you want to whip a flame, a lot of the time he'll whip off to the side, or he'll turn around and whip at an enemy that's coming up from behind. This brings me to the camera, which definitely needed work. There's 3 different modes you can try out, but they all seem to have the same problem of only showing the action in front of you when you're battling in circles. Graphically, I do like the settings that are represented here, and they look decent, although there is quite a bit of fog. Also, the character models could have used a few more polygons. Seeing some faces stretched over a low polygon head is more funny than anything else. The music in this game is amazing when it plays. It doesn't play all the time, and that's a shame because man is it good. Like I said, this is a decent action platformer, and the problems that it has can be overcome if you're willing to give it a try. In 1999, Konami released Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. At first, I thought this was just a re-release of the first game after they had fixed some of the issues. Wow, was I wrong. So the game does have a lot of levels from the first game, but these have been redesigned and lengthened. But the game does have a bunch of new stages as well. It feels like a lot more effort went into this release. The camera has also been tweaked and it does a better job of showing you what's in front of you, but I still found it to have problems. If they would have just given us manual control over the thing, it would have been fine. The game does use the expansion pack, which gives higher resolution to the textures. The soundtrack is still amazing and has a bunch of new tracks as well. If you're going to play one of the Castlevania titles on the N64, make sure it's Legacy of Darkness.
Body Harvest by DMA is a pretty cool little game. You play as this styling dude named Adam Drake who dresses like Samus from Metroid. Basically, aliens have taken over Earth by 2016 and now you need to travel to various places in the past to defeat them. It kind of reminds me of a primitive version of the EDF games in some respects as you're running around blasting these aliens. But it also has a tiny bit of Grand Theft Auto in that you can commandeer different vehicles, run over people, and all that. Anyway, you have different objectives for each area that you need to complete. For example, you see a giant boulder, so you need to find some dynamite. Blow it up and find the old guy's house, and then you can get the key to the hangar from him. Stuff like that. You can enter some buildings to find extra health and fuel as well as other items like new weapons and ammo. So you definitely want to explore everywhere. The problem is that it all looks the same and it's really easy to lose your bearings. The map screen helps out a little bit, but really not as much as it should. You can blast enemies on your foot or while in your vehicle, and I almost always chose to fight enemies in my vehicle because of the extra maneuverability and defense that it afforded me. It's fun blasting these bug-like aliens. The game looks awful though. The camera is pretty bad. Pretty much everything is bad. In fact, there's really nothing positive that can be said about the visuals. The music is really good though, and not muffled at all. Still, it's an enjoyable game, but it did make me a little bit motion sick after an hour or so. I'd really like to see this one remade for modern systems and done justice. Super Nintendo fans love RPGs and the tradition continues on the N64 with Quest 64. Fans would never give this console a pass if it didn't have quality RPGs. I mean, look how much they hate the Genesis. Good thing they have Quest 64 to meet all of their RPG needs. You star as a kid trying to save the land. You're questing in 64 bits. Screw you, Chrono Trigger. Screw you, Phantasy Star. Screw you, Final Fantasy 3. Screw you, Lunar 2. And screw you, Panzer Dragoon Saga. That's because Quest 64 is in town. Battles feature octagonal areas where you can move and attack. Excitement doesn't get much more exciting than this. Quest 64. It takes a really long time to move anywhere and it makes you feel like you're on a real quest. 64 bits! Actually, just kidding, this sucks.
Ogre Battle 64 was released in 2000 and it's a real-time strategy RPG. It's real time because there's really no set turns for your characters and enemies. You can move them around the overworld map at your leisure or try to intercept your enemies or run away if you're weak. When you do get into battles, combatants fight in real time. In actuality, there's little that you control here. You can choose at any time who you want your little group to target, but that's as much control as you're going to have over battles. As you start to fight, each side takes 2 attacks and then the battle ends. Someone is declared a winner and a loser, and then you go back to the overworld map. From here, you can just chase your enemy to keep on battling him or go somewhere else. Just like previous entries into the series, this is a great time if you're into strategy RPGs. Thank God that the developers only use polygons in the overworld map areas. Each battle still uses hand-drawn sprites and backgrounds, and they look really nice. The music is also highly enjoyable and kind of gives the game an epic feel to it. If you're a fan of this kind of game and have the time, I'd recommend it. There's not much of this stuff on the system, so it's kind of nice to have a good one here. Here's Paper Mario, developed by Intelligent Systems, and it's the second RPG-style game starring that little plumber. After defeating Mario with the Star Rod in the intro, Bowser has once again kidnapped Princess Peach. Mario isn't a sore loser though, and in his quest to save the princess, he helps the 7 star spirits, which in turn help him counter the effects of the Star Rod. As the title suggests, Mario is paper thin in this game. Actually, everything in the game is paper thin. At the time, I really thought this was a cool idea, and Nintendo did an excellent job making everything look as if it was cut out of a piece of paper. So this is touted as a regular RPG, but I feel that it's almost more of an action RPG. Sure, there's turn-based battles, but you have much more control over Mario and whoever he has at his side helping him out. Enemies are in plain sight on screen, and most of the time you can just avoid them if you don't want to get into a battle. In all actuality, it really isn't a tough game. If you're not much into RPGs, then this would be a great game to get you into the genre. The graphics are very colorful, and the polygons for the most part look great with a fair amount of detail. The writing in this game is comical, and I'll admit that I laughed more than a few times. This is definitely one of the highlights for the Nintendo 64 library.
Okay, Dave, are you loving the Nintendo 64 redo episode so far?
I am loving it, Joe. I'm having a great time playing these games, but probably not as much as you are, because you're a hidden fanboy for Nintendo. I know it secretly. But yes, I am loving this episode.
Anyway, let's just get back to the games. We didn't show much of Starfox 64 in the original episode because it was mentioned in a previous episode and people complain whenever we cover games more than once. Ah well, here it is, and it's basically a remake or a retelling of the original game on the Super Nintendo. Basically, the story is that you need to defeat evil and restore peace. Yeah, it's actually a bit deeper than that, but it doesn't really matter to the gameplay here. You fly the R-Wing around again just like in the first game, only this time it controls much more smoothly thanks to the nearly impressive power of the Nintendo 64. You can keep tapping the fire button for rapid shots or hold it in to build up a charge shot, which will let you lock onto an enemy. Now, you can't lock onto multiple enemies Panzer Dragoon style, but in the words of the immortal Keiji Inafune, it's better than nothing. You also have new maneuvers like a U-turn and a somersault, though I couldn't pull them off every time I tried them, but most of the time they worked. There's tons of radio chatter here, and of course that's to be expected since you fly with a team. They suck, and you've always got to rescue them. Personally, I just wish they'd all die so that I could fly alone in peace. If they do get damaged, then they usually sit out the rest of that round as well as the next round. There are multiple routes you can take which are determined as you play each stage. The graphics have not aged well, and honestly, they kinda look like bad FMV since it's so grainy. The music is good, though it sounds like the Super Nintendo, and there are tons of voice recordings. What's weird is that there's a training mode which shows you all of the moves, but Peppy tells you everything you need to know anyway during actual gameplay. In fact, he does it through the entire game. So there's really no need that I can see for the training mode to exist. Still, all in all, it's a great game that I've enjoyed since I got the Japanese version back in the day, and I highly recommend it for this system. You can also get a nicer looking and sounding version on the 3DS.
You're dead meat, pal. I won't let you get away from me.
Fox, get this guy off me! Why are ships coming out of the base?
Hybrid Heaven from Konami is an interesting game. It's actually one of the few times that Konami paid attention to the system. I'm not really sure what the story is, as everything seems really weird and creepy, but you seem to be some sort of secret government agent badass type of dude. You run around inside your base where your own guard turrets and things will shoot at you, so you have to shoot them down. Kinda weird, but okay. It's the typical hold the R trigger and fire with another button, in this case the Z button, or Z for all of you outside of the United States. You roam around shooting and unlocking things, and eventually you'll get in your first fight with a monster. And here's where things get a little strange. It's all menu driven. You choose from a set of moves what attack you'd like to throw and if you'd like to guard or counter or whatever. As strange as it sounds, it kinda works. Now granted, it doesn't work extremely well, but it's good enough to get the job done. But that means that the fights take longer and you don't really feel a whole lot of intensity. It's about the same as a turn-based RPG, only since it's used in a game like this, it feels kinda strange. The graphics aren't horrible, and this is also an expansion pack enhanced game. You can choose from the original low resolution, high resolution, or high resolution letterbox. Sadly, like many expansion pack enhanced games, the high resolution drops the frame rate substantially. And honestly, it's not like the frame rate is impressive to begin with. Here's what it looks like on the normal resolution. Here's high resolution. It's a damn slideshow. And here's high resolution letterbox. And too bad it's letterbox and not true anamorphic widescreen. Even with the menu-driven fight scenes, I couldn't play through the game like this. Seriously, I just recommend keeping it in the low resolution mode. It's an interesting game with an interesting concept. At the time of this review, it's fairly cheap, so you may want to give it a go.
Hey, let's talk about Mario Party! In this game, you can play up to 4 players at a time or even single player with 3 computer-controlled characters to even it out. Each player hits a dice block and moves the number of spaces shown. Once everyone has taken a turn, fun ensues and everyone plays a minigame together. The winner gets coins that are used to buy items and stars. Stars are the best thing that you can get and will ultimately help you win the game. The boards were also cool to play on and were pretty simple. When landing on blue circles, you get 3 coins, but when landing on red circles, 3 coins get taken from you. There's other circles that do different things, like this star that lets you play a single-player minigame, or these question mark circles that triggered something on the game board. There was a lot of great ideas for minigames, and the competition was fierce. A year later, Nintendo released Mario Party 2. This game plays exactly like the previous game, but it has 5 all-new boards to play on and a bunch of new minigames. This entry was my favorite for the N64. I really liked the themes of the boards, and of course my favorite was Horrorland. Well, not Horrorland. Well, you know what? If they did have a Horrorland, I think I'd like that too. Anyways, the imagery was really cool and it would switch from day to night if you land on the question mark circle. Hell, even the characters got into the act and dressed up for the boards they were playing on. The minigames were good, but you know, it wasn't good that they were already starting to recycle games from the first title. And believe it or not, Mario Party 3 was released a year after Part 2. It plays the same as always, but to keep the action from getting stale, Nintendo tried some different things. They added a quest mode where you have to play all the boards and collect stamps. It's very superficial, as all you're doing is playing the same battle game that you'd play with the 3 AI opponents. They slightly changed the graphical style, which in spots mimics paper cutouts like Paper Mario, which is kinda cool. They also started adding a lot more types of circles to the playboard. This title boasts 70 all-new minigames, and they're alright for the most part. They even started adding games of chance, which I don't care for since there's absolutely no skill involved. Like this one where you pick a chest and hope that you're lucky enough to uncover Toad.
Yes!
After Mario Party 8 on the Wii, I finally got sick of playing these titles and haven't touched them in years. Although I did have fun playing these games for this review, maybe I just needed a long break. Did you know that Nintendo made a rail shooter app? Well, they did, and it's called Pokemon Snap. You're shooting Pokemon left and shooting them right. Not with a gun though, as that would be impolite. This wasn't quite the experience fans wanted to see, using a camera to snap pictures of Pokemon wandering free. A traditional Pokemon entry fans did want, but side games like this is often what they got. Take pictures of Pokemon for the Pokemon Report as you ride your automated buggy around the resort. Up to 60 different pictures are what you can take, but I rarely took more than 30 for efficiency's sake. After you're done with your ride, you will need the aid of the professor to whom you give your photos to grade. He checks size, pose, and if you centered it right, gives some bonus points if other Pokemon are in there, he might. The control is good and not at all lame, as it's really easy to center Pokemon in frame. Later you get apples which can be used as bait. This is just to get a better picture, not seal their fate. You also get a Pester Ball which brings them out to the paparazzi. This is a trick that I learned back when I stalked that creepy Bill Cosby. The different areas you explore all look pretty good. They kept fog to a minimum so you can see most of the hood. But pop up in the distance mini Pokemon do. It looks really ugly, kind of like last night's poo. I really like the musical soundtrack as it meets my ear, but is it rearranged tunes or new stuff I hear? I can't tell because I'm not much into the series at all. Hell, this is the game I played most next to Pokemon Pinball. But even if you're a true fan, then maybe you should. Give this game a try because it's really quite good.
There were a few Star Wars games on the system, but I always liked Rogue Squadron. You spend the entire game flying various Rebel vehicles on lots of different missions, mostly directly over the surface of various planets. So if you don't like flying ships in Star Wars games, or you want some missions that are on foot, this is probably not the best game for you. However, Factor 5 did a great job utilizing the N64 hardware, especially if you have an expansion pack installed. The game starts you out just 6 months after the original Death Star has been destroyed, and you play as Luke through the majority of the game. Most levels will let you select from different Rebel crafts, but I usually choose the X-Wing because, well, come on, it's the X-Wing. It's pretty easy to control. You can boost and brake and all that, hell, you can even roll your ship entirely if you want. Gameplay usually consists of destroying all of the enemy, and often there will be a fragile Rebel or civilian thing to defend from the Empire attack as well. And yes, there are a few escort missions. The gameplay isn't perfect, but it's good. Often I found myself blowing up without knowing exactly what caused it. And sometimes it's kind of hard to get the enemy in your sights. The graphics run in interlaced mode if you have the expansion pack and are really sharp for the console. This city, however, really has a pollution problem. Kinda looks like this mission takes place in Beijing. The frame rate certainly isn't the best, but it's usually high enough so that you feel like you still have some control over your craft. The music is all Star Wars-y with original stuff thrown in here and there, and it's all done with the N64's internal synth, and it sounds pretty damn good. Although I like the GameCube sequel better, I do recommend this game, but it does get repetitive. Thankfully, you can save your progress.
But not bad.
One of the other Star Wars games is Shadows of the Empire from Lucasarts. At first I didn't like this one very much because the presentation is sloppy and the camera can get really weird trying to trip the AT-ATs. But most people like this one more than Rogue Squadron, and honestly, I can see why. This game takes place during and after The Empire Strikes Back, and you don't play as any of the characters from the movie. You play as Dash Rendar. Don't you just love that name? Dash Rendar. But what sets this one apart is that it's not just flying missions. There are a lot of on-foot missions, and the game flows really well. Of course, there are plenty of stages where you have to fly a ship or other vehicles. I haven't played much of it yet, but I am really enjoying it so far. You just gotta be careful, because it's really easy to fall off a ledge! Also, I don't understand why some of the camera views exist. It was an early time for 3D, I guess. This one uses digitized music from the movies in mono. Seriously, check this one out.
All right, we're rolling right along here, and we've got a lot of games covered. They're all, there's a lot of good ones in there, but I've noticed a serious lack of racing games, which we had in the first N64 episode. What's going on here?
Well, it's probably because we had them in the first N64 episode, but I'm going to find a way to squeeze them in there.
Good. .1080 Snowboarding was one of the new IPs at the time for Nintendo, and it paid off. This game packed a lot of tood with edgy music and edgy characters. There's more than a few modes for you to play here, and they'll keep you busy for quite a while. Match Race is a race between you and a computer-controlled character. The courses are all long and fun to race on with some great graphics. Though I always thought it was wrong for this course to have you race on the street and then on grass for a portion of the course. It's very unrealistic and would quickly ruin your board. There's a trick attack mode where you can race down the same tracks but try to pull off tricks for points. And there's a contest mode where you're racing through gates all while trying to pull off tricks for more points. And of course, what snowboarding game would be complete without a halfpipe? This was my favorite a long time ago when my nephew and I would have competitions. He always killed me, and it's obvious as to why if you look at my performance here. As you can see, I'm not good at this game and never really have been. Still though, I do have a good time and always aspire to get better. Snowboard Kids is another game in the genre. This one is a bit more cartoony and less serious than 1080. There's a few different modes here that make up the game. First off is Battle Race, where you race against 3 other racers. You can also get weapons and use them to help you get the edge. Although the edgiest I ever got was 2nd place, I feel with a bit more practice I could have won them all. Each race consists of multiple laps. Yeah, I thought doing laps on a snowboarding game was quite weird also. At the end of a lap, you have to hop on a chairlift which takes you to the top of the mountain for the next lap. There's also a skill games mode with 3 sub-games. In speed game, you have to collect the fans laying around the course that will get you down faster. Low score is the key here. In shot game, you have to shoot snowmen for points. And every time you shoot a snowman, you get more bullets. And finally is trick game. You have to do tricks on a halfpipe and off of jumps for points. I really sucked at this game. Overall though, this game is generally fun and controls pretty well. Rocket, Robot on Wheels, released in 1999, was developed by Sucker Punch, the same guys who went on to create the Sly Cooper series. In this game, you control the titular robot Rocket as he scours Whoopee Land for tickets. Finding tickets unlocks new areas for Rocket to search. Not only do you find tickets, but also tokens. These tokens aren't just worthless collectathon crap, you use them to buy abilities. And of course, learning new abilities makes it easier for you to collect those tickets. Tickets for the most part aren't just lying around for you to collect. You have to search them out, and this might include doing mundane things like playing tic-tac-toe with a chicken, or building a roller coaster which you have to do twice to get 2 different tickets. At least you get to ride the roller coaster after you've created it, and that's kind of fun. Hell, let's face it, all the tasks that you do in this game kind of feel mundane. That's not to say that this game isn't enjoyable, as I actually had a decent time playing it. There's enough to discover here to keep you interested for quite a long time. Rocket controls pretty well, but it would be a lot better if the camera wasn't so wonky. It's very unstable, and although you have control over it, you're going to be messing around with it a lot. Oh, and if you like xylophones and keyboard music, then you're going to love this soundtrack. It has plenty of both and feels totally jazzy. Give this game a chance, you just might like it.
I'm gonna mention Waverace 64 Kawasaki Jetski given any chance, and you're gonna like it. This is one of my favorites for the console simply because it's the game that I pull down and play the most often. There's no huge quest to get into that takes days and days. You can just play for an hour every few months or so, and that's awesome. This was an early game and it kind of shows, but it still plays very well. It feels like you're on the waves, and of course trying to go to the correct side of each buoy only adds to the fun. The announcer is super happy to be here, and the music is really happy too. This truly is a must-have for the system.
Okay.
And of course, we gotta mention Mario Kart 64 really quick. We've covered this plenty before, so I'll just say that it's a great update to the original game. Most people like the multiplayer, playing with up to 4 separate individuals at the same time, but I always enjoyed the single player mode a lot as well. As always, it's really fun and frustrating at the same time. This was my favorite Mario Kart up until the DS version came out. Definitely check it out unless you're sick to death of Mario. And we've also mentioned F-Zero X before as well. But we've never shown it running at 60 frames per second before. And honestly, there's not too many games on the console that can claim to do that, but this is one of them. It's an excellent and challenging game with amazing music, even though it's in mono and it sounds fairly compressed. There's lots of tracks to race on and stuff to unlock here. I really like the way they changed how boosting works, as it's tied to your life bar. You can boost as much as you want just as long as your bar has life, but it drains a little each time. Of course, the life is easy to refill, and just as long as you're not too reckless with your driving, you should be okay. This is another definite must-have for the console. We mentioned Road Rash 64 briefly over 5 years ago. Or was it 6? I don't know. We didn't think much of it, but some of you insisted that it was pretty good. So I thought I'd take another quick look at it. I'm gonna say that at best, it's okay. It doesn't look even a tenth as good as the proper 32-bit versions. Compared to the 3DO version, it's kinda like comparing Atari to the Neo Geo, and this is the Atari version right here. It looks bad. Gameplay-wise though, it's not too bad. Though it's certainly not as tight as the Road Rash non-3D games made by EA themselves. If you have the expansion pack, you get a little bit more horizontal resolution, but you'll barely notice it all. The game is certainly playable, but I'll be sticking with the 3DO version.
Probably the most popular games for the system are the two Zelda titles. The first one is Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. After seeing how well Mario turned out in 3D, I was excited to see how Link would make the transition, and I wasn't disappointed. It's easy to see why this title became an instant classic. The game is very good, and controlling Link feels very natural in 3D. I'll admit it took a bit of time getting used to Link jumping automatically when he comes to the edges of platforms, but now it just feels right. Hyrule looks good in 3D. It's a huge world, and even though it's pretty sparse in spots, it feels very complete. Not just the overworld, but all the dungeons are huge as well, and having a fully fledged 3D world, the puzzles took on a new level of thought. The puzzles in the dungeons were really fun to figure out. I actually really like the story in this game, and I love all the cutscenes that help piece it together. And what Zelda game would be complete without an awesome soundtrack? Lots of new tunes to go with the ones that we've heard before, and they're all completely enjoyable. Even though it's not my favorite Zelda game, it's definitely in my top 5. Next came Majora's Mask, and in this title Link leaves and gets caught up in something very crazy. The Skull Kid, who is a loner and a bully, steals Majora's Mask, which was used in hexing rituals by an ancient tribe. The Skull Kid wears this mask and steals Epona, Link's Ocarina, and turns Link into a Deku. After the first 72 hours of game time, everything comes to a head and Link gets his Ocarina back and plays the Song of Time. This little trick lets Link start the 72-hour clock over again before this big moon crashes into the planet. So this is how you play the game. Accomplish as much as you can in 72 hours, and then play the Song of Time to reset the clock. It's simple enough and it works just fine. I've got to say that the first time we talked about this game in our other N64 episode, I came off rather harshly and said that I don't care for this game because of the clock feature and the masks and all that. What I really meant to say is that this is a quality game and Nintendo did a fine job with it, but I'm not a big fan of the clock system. Since you use it all throughout the game, it starts to wear out and can be annoying at times. In the end, it's still a good game, but as far as Zelda games go, it's far from my personal favorite.
Neon Genesis Evangelion from Gainax and Bandai was only released in Japan. I don't recall ever seeing the anime, but in this game you fight one-on-one with giant mechs in a scenario which reminds me of Ultraman or Godzilla. The game doesn't play particularly well and it's brutally difficult, even though the only difficulty selection available is the easy mode. But the game has an extremely good presentation. The visuals are top-notch and really convey lots of excitement. Likewise, the music is really well done and it sounds fantastic. It's just too bad that the controls are stiff and all the moves seem timing-based, almost as if they were based on QuickTime events, even though they're not. Still, it's a game to check out if you want to be impressed by the visuals and audio. Hell, maybe you have what it takes for this game. Okay, quick character mascot rundown beginning with Super Mario 64. This was a launch title and still one of the best games for the console. It showed the world that 3D gameplay can be done well. All the different environments and tasks for Mario to complete will keep you busy for quite a while. And then there's Banjo Kazooie from Rare. This one definitely gives Super Mario 64 a run for its money with Rare's usual cheeky humor. If you like collecting notes, puzzle pieces, and other things, then you're gonna love this. And let's not forget its sequel, Banjo Kazooie. All the same moves, control, and gameplay are here, but it seems much slower, kind of like the game is struggling to run. So far, I prefer the first game. Donkey Kong 64 is also by Rare. This game requires and comes with the expansion pack. What's cool is that this is one of the very few N64 games that has a proper anamorphic widescreen mode, though it awkwardly switches back to 4x3 for non-gameplay scenes. The game is pretty slow to start like most Rare games are. But it has the DK rap, and honestly, that's all you need in your life.
He has no style. He has no grace. This punk has a funny face.
Finally, there's Conker's Bad Fur Day by, surprise surprise, Rare. It's a great game that was in development hell, and it prides itself on being the British version of vulgar. It's like being gross yet polite all at the same time. There's lots of different types of scenarios to play through here. If you're offended by toilet humor, stay far, far away and maybe play Mario instead. But if you like it, be sure to pick up 2 or 3 copies because they're super cheap. Only $70+ for a card-only copy. Nice!
All right, there you have it. The N64 part due in the books.
Indeed.
That was a great episode, I thought. You really pulled it out strong in the end with some Nintendo and Rare love. I thought it was good anyways.
Indeed. And what did you guys think of this Nintendo 64 episode? Do you think it was better than our original? Have you seen the original Nintendo 64 episode? If you haven't, go back, check it out, leave us some hateful comments. We always appreciate that.
Always.
And what do you think of the console? I mean, it's a lot of people's favorite console, I think mainly because they grew up with it.
Oh yeah, big time. And what do you think of 4K video if you're watching it?
I mean, the Nintendo 64, it requires 4K video to appreciate. And if you watched it in 4K, let us know. If you didn't,
never mind.
Anyway, what do you think of the Nintendo 64? I believe I've already asked that. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
What's up, Joe?
Oh, hi, Dave. I'm just admiring my PlayStation 4. It's a video game system with graphics indiscernible from reality.
You're kidding, right? I can't believe you bought this. The graphics are so good they require no imagination at all. Joe, this has got to be the stupidest thing you've bought in your entire life. I'm sorry. What is it, Joe? You know, I really don't have time to keep coming over here for this crap, alright? Let me guess, you're gonna show me another new system with real graphics and absolutely no imagination, right?
Oh, hi, Dave. No, this week I have the Nintendo 64. It's a system which graphics require a copious amount of imagination.
Now this is more like it. With Nintendo 64's excessive fog and blurry textures, you need full imagination to enjoy this. Nintendo clearly knows that imagination is the key. I'm still not sure what they were imagining when they designed this controller. Building an active imagination is very healthy, so kudos to Nintendo for making everyone's mind extremely fit. Joe, you are a great friend, and I'd like to give you this copy of Uncharted 4 for the PlayStation 4. You're not going to believe the graphics are so realistic.